Is it worth paying £54 for this rather than paying £15 for this? Cheap versus expensive tools, are they really worth the premium? Well, in this video, we're going to put these two RJ45 crimping tools to the test and see whether it's really worth paying extra for the Klein Tools version or whether this cheap Amazon version will do just as good a job. Make sure you like and subscribe, and let's get into it. Okay, so first impressions, Klein Tools packaging is obviously more sturdy, but you know, it just takes longer to get unboxed. Not really an advantage for me. In terms of what these do, they do exactly the same thing. In fact, side by side, they look very, very similar. In terms of the weight, very similar in weight too, but there's a notable difference. As straight away as I look at it, I can see one difference, and that is the Klein Tools has the color coding for the wires on it. Now, if you're an absolute pro when it comes to doing data, you probably don't need that reminder because you know by heart the color sequence of an RJ45 plug. However, if you're like me and you only do it every so often, every time you do it you forget what the order should be, and so having this color coding is actually really, really useful because you can glance at it and you can pass the cable through. I'll show you how it works in a second. Quality wise, obviously this feels a little bit more premium, but the best way to find out whether cheap tools are any good or not is to put them to the test. So let's get one of these working. So I've got here a length of Cat6 UTP data cable. I've also got a box of Cat6 RJ45 pass-through connector plugs. In fact, I brought two different brands, and this is another interesting comparison that we'll do as part of this video. Is one was quite cheap, the other one was a little bit more expensive, and there's some interesting features that I want to talk to you about on these at the end of the video. We'll get this box open first. And the difference between a pass-through or a non-pass-through connector is very subtle, but the time it takes to terminate one is what makes the difference. So pass-through is exactly what it says. The wires pass through, and it just makes it super easy and quick to terminate. You can use one of these tools. The non-pass-through ones, the end is completely blocked, and what that means is that you have to cut them to the exact right length and then gently put them in and then crimp them, and it's just a lot more faffy. So pass-through is kind of like the Rolls-Royce of the RJ45 connector, in my opinion, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So you've got this little tool with the cheap one, which actually the Klein one doesn't come with, and this allows you to gently score around the outside sheath, snap that off, strip it back. If you're using an RJ45 crimp that's got a boot like this, it's basically a nice way to neatly finish off. You need to slide that over first. That is a classic faux pas that I've made a few times where you forget to put this over and then you've got to redo the whole thing. So just slide that over first, then that's done. And then all you do with these, this is not a tutorial, but kind of got to show you guys how it works as part of the process, is just splay these wires out here. You've got the four pairs. This is basically like a packer that goes inside and it maintains the twist of the twisted cores. Then you can just untwist these. What I like to do is just straighten them out with my hand individually. Okay, so now we've got our four pairs untwisted. What we've got to do is get these into the right order in terms of colour. And that's where the Klein one really comes in handy because it shows you the colour sequence that you need. Now there's two options, there's either A or B, and how I've always been taught is A for America, B for Britain, but I know that's completely wrong. It's basically A is a crossover cable, B is a standard cable, I think, but let me know if I'm wrong in the comments. And in Britain, which is why I always think B for Britain, we generally just use the standard setup, which is the T568B. Now what you can do is, and this is the advantage of the Klein ones, is you can get this crimp connector and pop it in to the tool. So you open it up fully, and then you can click that in there, ready to go. Then you can see from this diagram exactly what the order of the colours needs to be. So I can see that I need to do striped orange, then solid orange, striped green, then solid blue, then striped blue, then solid green, then striped brown, and then solid brown. So you can kind of then roughly get them in the right order and just straighten them out with your fingers. Now, I would love to know from you guys who do data day in and day out if you've got any tips to speed this up, because it already feels like a bit of a tedious process to me. It's quite, you know, quite long and drawn out just to get to the point when you can actually crimp the connector on. So do you have a special tip for us on how to untwist the wires quickly, how to strip the cable quickly, how to prepare it ready for crimping? I'd love to know in the comments. But for me, I get it like that, and then I double check the colours against this little diagram. So I've got striped orange, striped green, solid blue, striped blue, solid green, striped brown, solid brown. So I know that those are in the right order now. And then I get my tool and I just slide the wires through the pass-through connector like so. Now, if the ends are all different lengths and they're a little bit wobbly like that, a little bit wiggly, the best thing to do rather than try and force it is just to cut them off. And a pair of flush cutters like this comes in really handy when you're doing data. So I would recommend buying yourself a pair of these. You don't need to get the expensive Knipex ones. There are cheaper alternatives out there which are just as good. Slide the wires through now, like so. There we go. Right. So you slide it all the way through so that the sheath of the cable is inside your pass-through connector. And then, and this is the other advantage to the Klein one, you can look at it from the other side and you can check to make sure that the order is still right, because sometimes when you push the wires through, they can kind of get twisted and they can cross over each other. So I can check it on the other side compared to the colour drawing as well. So I know, I'm confident now, that these are in the right order. And then, and this is the easy part, all you do is, I'll show it like this, all you do is squeeze. And then pull your connector out. What that does, there's a blade in here which goes up and it trims the ends of the wires, cuts them off flush with the end of the connector. And then if you look at it, you can just make sure that all the pins have closed and pushed in properly. Sometimes it's worth just giving it a second squeeze just to make sure. There's nothing wrong with doing that. So make sure that everything's crimped down properly, because the crimping tool not only cuts the ends off, but it pushes these little brass pins into the wires to make contact with the wires. And then the other thing it does is it crimps down here, which holds the sheath of the cable in to the RJ45 crimp connector. It's like a 3-step process that happens all in one go. So that looks pretty good to me. And then I can slide my boot up like this. I don't know, let me know what you call this. Some people call it a boot, some people call it a shroud. You slide that up, and then that. Oh man, that's quite solid actually. I think with these ones you're supposed to crimp them. You're supposed to slide the boot on and then crimp it afterwards. So I've made a little mistake there. So we'll try it again in a minute. So that's the Klein one. Okay, let's face it, it works perfectly. It does what you need it to do. And the color coding is a really nice feature. But is it worth the extra £40 just for the color coding? I'm not sure. I suppose the other difference you've got with these is you've got the RJ11 function on the Klein, which you don't have on this cheaper version. So if you do a lot of RJ11 connectors, then maybe it's worth having the Klein for that as well. But we very rarely do RJ11s anymore. That's basically a traditional telephone socket, which we don't really use here in the UK. So let's give it a go with this one and see how this one compares. First things first, It doesn't feel as nice in the hand as the Klein one, let's be honest. I'm trying to unlock it. Okay, so you've got this little locking pin here that you push in. That locks it. So to unlock it, you need to push that across and then it will open. And then you've got the action. Now both of these as well, I didn't mention it, but they have a stripping and cutting tool built into them. It's exactly the same basically. I mean, to be honest, and this is what's sort of ironic about cheap versus expensive tools. I could get shot down for this, but they're probably built in the same factory or a very similar factory. You know, all these kind of things, they end up being made in the same places most of the time. Somebody's going to tell me that Klein tools are only made in America and not in China, but I don't know. However, you've got this cutting tool, right? So to cut the data cable, you can just pop that through there, squeeze. Oh, that's awful. No, surely that can't be right. Okay, no, that's fine. You've got to butt it up right to the corner like that. And then it cuts really nicely actually. The other option is here, it's the strip function. So a little bit like this tool here, you can just use it to twist around. It just blades around and then enables you to strip the end off the cable, all right? So, okay, that works fine. Now let's try the Klein one just for comparison. So we do cut, we're gonna butt it right the way up into the corner. Yeah, exactly the same. Now, can you hear the difference? You've got a lovely action on this with the clicking, the sort of ratcheting function. This is just locked or unlocked. There's no ratchet, there's no nice clicky sound. Again, is it worth paying extra for? I'll let you guys decide. In fact, I'll give you my brutally honest opinion at the end. In terms of stripping with the Klein, we pop that cable in like that, squeeze down, turn around. Okay, and that is actually much nicer than the stripping function on this one, and probably why they give you this, because the stripping function doesn't work very well on that. However, on the Klein one, you don't need it because the stripping function actually works really well, and it even cuts nicely through the plastic film. So that's definitely a plus for the Klein on that. Let's get another plug. Put our boot on first. And then we'll do exactly the same with this. Now, is there a clever way to separate these using this little tool? That's not bad actually. I can literally hear the keyboard warriors going, I can't believe you're reviewing this tool and you basically don't know how to do data. And you know, this is the funny thing, is that electricians always get slated for doing data, because data technicians who do this day in, day out, they're like, this is a pro skill, you need to have your own qualification for this stuff. This is top tier, top level stuff. It's not just the kind of thing that a normal electrician should do. And then Sparkies are like, yeah, but it's just a cable, but it's just smaller, that's all, you know? Now, here's the test. With this one, you've got no color coding written on it. So, can I remember the color coding without looking at the Klein? If you know it off by heart, then you don't need the Klein tool. If you don't know it off by heart and you've got this one, you can just check online, right? Just Google it. Because you don't have the comparison on the other side, you do need to be really careful to make sure that the order is correct. I'm going to slide this over, and before I do, just make sure the colours are correct. Dotted orange, solid green. Yeah, see, they've gone over each other now. Slide the sheath in as far as you can go, and there we are. We're ready to crimp. Now, obviously, with this one, because I wanted to see the colours, I've not put it into the tool yet. So I do it before, and then I can slide it into the tool. And it doesn't feel very nice to start with. Doesn't really want to go in. So it's got a diagram of how it should be. So that is right, but it just doesn't feel right somehow. What I've seen people do as well, I don't know if you do this, but twist these up, right, little tip. I probably should have left them longer, but if you twist them together, then when you cut them, they don't all fall into bits like this. They stay together and it's easier to clean up. can't remember where I saw that, but it's a little tip for you. So, yeah, there we go. Okay, it does go in, but yeah, it just doesn't feel nearly as nice. I think I am a bit of a posh git when it comes to tools. I'm a bit of a prince, but I've just, you know, I've got to say already, I know which one wins by far on this. It's not the same. Doesn't look like it's quite flush in there, which I don't really like, but it feels like it's as far as it'll go, so let's try. Oh, that felt awful. Oh my goodness. Right, okay. Ah, I forgot to put the boot up to it again. Okay, but anyway, it's done, and it didn't feel great, I'll be honest, but it's done the job. It looks like everything's crimped properly. So it's done the job, but I was just not very confident in the quality of the crimp that I was going to get on this. And the action just doesn't feel great, to be honest. So, yeah, cheap tools, not sure, guys. I'll do a little summary at the end. But I want to retry this, give it another go, because that was my first attempt, and I want to make sure that it's not just me being an idiot and not knowing how to use the tool properly. So I'm going to cut this off using the cutting function. And this time, I'm going to use these. So these are the ViceLink. So these are the ViceLink RJ45 plugs, as opposed to the Bebe RJ45s. These ones are gold plated apparently. These ones are, I think, the cheaper versions. This is a tub of 50, or this comes in a pack of 25. And I just thought I'd try these different ones out to see which are the better quality, because as a team we like to stock these in our vans. So straight away, I don't like the fact that these are in different packets. Like, the amount of single-use plastic is just ridiculous. So you've got this packet, then you've got this packet, and then there's another packet that you've got to open. Yeah, not a fan of that at all, versus this, which is just in a nice jar. And yet you pay extra for a nice little plastic jar than you do for multiple packets. So that's the plug itself. And then the boot comes in another packet. Let's do a little side-by-side comparison. So these are the expensive ones. These are the cheap ones. My initial thoughts are they're basically exactly the same. The cheap ones, they flex a little bit. Expensive ones, flex a little bit. No, you know what, these are the cheap ones, these are expensive ones. See, I can't even tell the difference. If you like the packaging on these, pay a bit more. If you want to save the whales and not put loads of plastic into the oceans. But if you just care about money, then just buy the cheap ones, because they're exactly the same. Let's try this again, and we're going to go with the cheap ones, which are in the top here. Slide that over. You can actually hear it cutting through the inner sheath if you wind it a little bit more. I'm cheating now. I'm looking at the Klein one because I couldn't remember. Oh man, I hate data. It's like so fiddly. Who would choose deliberately to do this every single day of their life? Okay, it's quite a nice cutting. Quite a nice cutting action. Slide it all the way, and then this is where I'm going to avoid making the mistake that I did before and slide the boot on first before I crimp it down. There we go. 1, 2, 3. And that is done. And that, with the boot, is really nice, and that boot is not going anywhere now. So, pretty good. The whole twisting together thing didn't really work. I think I need to leave them longer and then twist them together, but it just feels like a waste of cable. I'm pretty happy with the finish on that. We've done 2 with this. We're going to give the Klein another go, and then we're going to do an overview of what my thoughts are. Guys who know data really well, let me know in the comments which of the pairs is twisted differently to the others. If you didn't know, one of the pairs in a twisted pair cable is actually twisted with a slightly looser twist than the others. So let me know which one it is. And also, you know, if you want to really nerd out in the comments and have a conversation, continue the conversation in the comments, what is the difference between Cat 5, Cat 5e, Cat 6, Cat 6a, Cat 7, Cat 8? There's a whole lot of data cables out there now. What's the difference? So my colours are good. I'm going to twist this properly this time. I'm going to put my boot in. Look at that, it worked. The little tip worked. Just leave it long enough. And that has crimped on beautifully. So there we go. So what are my overall thoughts about these two? Well, I may be a bit of a tool snob, but I've got to say, I would never be paying 15 quid for this. I mean, okay, it does the job, but it just doesn't feel nice, you know? So unless you're on a really tight budget, I'd say just get one of these in your toolkit. You know, it just feels so nice. It's got these little touches which just make all the difference in terms of speed and nice to use. And that color coding thing, although it's not essential, is a really nice touch. So my money's going to be going on the Klein this time, but let me know in the comments below if you think I'm wrong. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, we've got a whole load of other tool battles on this channel, cheap versus expensive. So hit the playlist up here where you can watch some more cheap versus expensive tool battles. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.